Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Akkerman, their Dutch Masters number 11. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so that if you're in a hurry, you can skip around, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. I do a new ink review daily. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Noodler's Nib Creeper, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done with a standard set of paper, Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, there are additional writing samples that will occur later. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to make sure I keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Now, let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is slightly darker than the 1.1, but it has no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading. 7 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit lighter than the 1.1, which means it's quite a bit lighter than the extra fine. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does offer quite a bit of shading. Quick starts dark, gets light, and gets dark. Fox starts light and gets dark. Lazy starts dark and gets light. Nice. 11 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows no color variation, and we got none. The scrubby of the medium shows color variation, and we are getting some. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 11 seconds to dry. Medium is a bit darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the 1.1, really, with no feather spread, halo, sheen, and yes, it does offer some shading. In brown, it starts dark and gets light. In quick, it starts dark, gets to mid-tone, and then goes to dark again. Dog starts dark and goes to mid-tone. So it's there, it's just not extreme. 8 seconds to dry. Now the medium is much darker than the extra fine, significantly darker than the 1.1. No feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade that I can see. 12 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine from far left to far right shows color variation, and that's the kind of color variation we're seeing in the writing. Medium shows none, and we got none. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is really very cool because there's this majority of a purple tone working its way up. Just above that, in a thin area, you see a kind of seafoam green. You see a kind of green there. And then you see this very bright turquoise at the top. That is an amazing mix of colors. And I'm loving how this looks. It looks like looking over the trees in a forest on a well-lit night. Tell me that doesn't sound a little poetic, but that is beautiful to look at. It really does. It looks like I'm looking at the tops of trees on
well-lit night. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now the purple that's on the bottom definitely puts a line there that's seeped into the page and really started to bond with the paper, which makes me feel that that could be its hang-around color.
Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it.
Looking at the highlighter, I go immediately to the lowercase h that becomes completely blown out, and because I write a lot of math in my notes, I'm worried about the loss of a single number screws everything up for me. So that's why I always put on any kind of blowout, no, I wouldn't use it. Looking at the water, it's only moving the darkest tones around, but really leaving that purple that we saw in the second chromatography right in place. Now, pen flush is reactivating and lifting, and you see right at the very top the beginnings of the white of the paper coming through. I do think that given just a little bit more time and a little bit of scrubby scrub, that the pen flush is all that you would need. But if for some reason it wasn't, 1/3 bleach solution does completely remove this from the page. Just make sure that you flush your pen with water thoroughly after so you don't rust your metal bits. I said that to the Tin Man once.
I test for viscosity or flow using a thing called a tilt test. I will link how I do that, the video of it, down below or up in the cards. I also then put it onto a standard distribution so it's more easily seen with all of the inks that I've tested. Now, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9.
Akkerman Dutch Masters number 11 has a viscosity of 3.63, making this a very dry ink. Now, if you recall when the swab was up looking at the chemical tests, you will have seen some sheen going on there, and that's common with very dense inks. So if this is very dense, it might be very dry writing, which is why we could have that viscosity that way. It could not need nearly as much ink on the page.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Akkerman Dutch Masters number 11 has an average dry time of 11 seconds, making this a faster drying ink. And if it is very dry writing and not putting a lot down, then it might not take as long for it to dry.
The second writing sample is done on TWSBI, Monocoque, and a composition notebook like science class.
Here we're looking at it on TWSBI notebook paper. We get no bleeding, no real ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect any, and we didn't get any. Monocoque. I don't know. No bleeding, minor ghosting, it's thin paper. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does have shade because if you look at it far left to far right as you travel down, it's certainly getting lighter. The extra fine looks a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does look like it's offering some shading, like Fox starts light and gets dark. Now I'm saying light to dark, but what I'm actually meaning is dark to darker. Like brown starts darker and becomes dark. Quick starts darker, becomes dark, and darker. So it's there, it's subtle, it's nice. 7 seconds to dry. It's not screaming. As much as I love camouflage shading, when it's very subtle like this, I enjoy that as well. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and yes, it does offer shading in the same very subtle ways. Brown is very dark to dark. Fox is very dark to very dark. Jumps starts dark to very dark. 11 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine far left to far right shows color variation. The medium far left to far right shows color variation, and that's the way that we got it in the writing. Composition notebooks. No bleeding. I'm going to tell you it's got normal composition ghosting. It's a very thin paper. The medium at the top has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is slightly darker than the medium at the top with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 3 seconds to dry. The scrubby does show us color variation left to right, although it doesn't show up in the writing sample. And that's all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Dutch Masters number 11? This is a very cool tone, very nice to look at. What it lacks in qualities about the ink, it makes up for in that tone entirely of itself. It is certainly a blue that is not the kind of blue that you get in other pens, but says you're using a fountain pen. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience? A medium flow, medium or fine nib really put down the perfect tone with this ink. I found that wet pens really put too much down, making it a bit too dark for me to enjoy it for the blue that it is. If you've made it this far, and according to my analytics, 50% of you aren't, and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.